morning. Yeah. So exciting to be here today. So glad that every one of you are here today. Everybody nudge your neighbors. Tell them, I'm glad you came. Come on. Look at your neighbor on your other side, your second choice. Tell them, I'm glad you came too. Come on. I'm so excited to be here. It's fun, isn't it, to be together all in one service? Of course, we can't do this every single week because there's just too many of us, but on a holiday weekend, it is fun. And so just make sure you look around, see people that maybe you haven't seen in a while because you come to different services, and let's just enjoy this together today. And what an awesome time to be able to worship together. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving, right? It's so awesome to be able to celebrate all the things that we are thankful for. In fact, how many of you have some things that you're thankful for? Raise your hand. Come on, all over the room today. Yeah, man. I was going through my list this week, just thinking about all the things that I am thankful for. I'm thankful for my family. I'm thankful for my friends. I'm thankful for my LifeGate family. Aren't you thankful for your LifeGate family, right? I'm thankful for my church. I'm thankful for leftover pumpkin pie. Come on, that's what I'm talking about. My mom made me a whole pumpkin pie, all just for me. She made 2 for the family and 1 for me. I took it home. I ate that whole pumpkin pie in 3 days. I'm just saying. I did, but you know what? Calories do not count within 72 hours of Thanksgiving. Come on, how many are thankful for that? I'm thankful for that. I am thankful that my team won yesterday. Whew, it was a close one, but Boomer Sooner. Come on, all the Sooners in the house. Come on, I didn't think I'd get very much there. Some of you are thankful when I don't talk about the Sooners on Sunday. I'm so thankful. Hey, I'm thankful that we are only 2 weeks. Everybody say 2 weeks. 2 weeks away from the start of Christmas at LifeGate, and always one of my favorite times of the year. We start in just 2 weeks. We start our Christmas series this year called Fear Not. I'm telling you, you don't want to miss that. And then on December the 21st is our LifeGate Family Christmas, and I want you to make sure and understand this. Today, I know we only got 1 service. We will definitely not be able to do that on Christmas. So many people come at Christmas. We're actually going to have 3 services. Everybody say that, 3 services. 3 services on Christmas Sunday on the 21st. Will be one at 8:30, one at 10 o'clock, and one at 11:30. At all of the services, we'll have pictures with Santa. We will have a petting zoo for all of the kids. Lots of fun stuff going on there. But after the last service, after that 11:30 service, we will actually have a Christmas train. So some of you may want to just come to the last service because you want to have your kids be able to ride on the Christmas train. So that's going to be so much fun. And then we also have Christmas Eve that's coming up on December the 24th. We have 2 services on that afternoon. We have one at 4 and one at 5:30, so you don't want to miss that. And on that night, we're going to have cookies and milk. We're going to have some fun stuff with our kids, and it'll be everybody in the auditorium together, a candlelight service. And I'm thankful for that because I'm thankful that God is going to bring people to connect with LifeGate Church, and moments are going to happen in their lives during the Christmas season. Come on, how many believe that, right? In fact, here's what I know is that people will come to church on Christmas that wouldn't come any other time of the year. So that gives us an opportunity to invite them. And so today at your seats, there are some invite cards for Christmas. Here's what coming up in just a couple of weeks. Let's use this opportunity to invite our friends and our neighbors and our family members. And we're gonna do our best to create a moment to make an experience so that people can then have an experience with God. And I believe that God will touch and change and minister to their lives. So I am thankful that all of you are going to invite somebody for Christmas, right? And so much to be thankful for. Most of all, though, I'll tell you what, I am thankful for my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Come on, right? I am thankful, yes, for what He has done for me and in my life. Here's what I know is I was lost, but now I'm found. Come on, I was blind, but now I see. Man, I know that I was on my way to hell, but Jesus came down and He rescued me. Come on, He saved me from my sin, and He gave me a purpose to live for. He called me into the ministry, and He has a plan and a hope and a future for my life. Come on, and every single one of you that are a follower of Jesus, come on, you got that very same thing to be thankful for today. So come on, can we just give the Lord praise? Yeah. So much to be thankful for. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. In fact, here's kind of our key thought for today, and that is this: the more you have been forgiven of, the more you have to be thankful for. Come on, how many know that is true? And we've been in this series over this last few weeks called The Act of Worship. So everybody say, the act of worship. The act of worship. And what we've been doing is we've been talking about worship. We've been talking about some of the different ways that we express our worship to God. And we've had this heart of gratitude for all that God has done in our lives. And in fact, there's kind of this key verse that really is where this series really comes from in Romans chapter 12 and verse number 1. And this is what it says. It says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, offer your body as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God, for this is your true and proper" what? Your true and proper worship. One translation says it like this: this is your act of worship. That when we think about all that God has done for us, there's only one reasonable way to respond, and that is to offer our bodies, to offer our lives to God as an act of worship. And so we've been talking about some of the different acts of worship, some of the different ways that we express our worship to God. We talked the first week about lifting our hands. Everybody say, lift your hands. Lifting our hands. We talked the second week about bowing our knees. Everybody say, bow your knee. Then last week we talked about using your talents. Everybody say that. Use your talents. Use your talents. Now, next week, here's what we're going to do, is we're going to talk about bringing our gifts. In fact, if you remember during the All-In series, we challenged you to make an all-in commitment to bring a year-end offering, a year-end gift to the Lord, all in to just express our gratitude to Him. Many of you have made that commitment. Many of you already gave that. Praise the Lord for that. That's pretty awesome. But on December the 7th, next Sunday, we're going to wrap up this series by talking about how we worship by bringing our gifts to the Lord, and we're going to bring our all-in end of the year offerings. I'm going to bring mine. I'm going to challenge you and encourage you to bring yours, and we're going to celebrate all that God has done and all that God is going to do in that act of worship of giving, all right? But today, here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about another way that we act out our worship, another way we express our worship, and we're going to talk about this lady in the Bible who worshiped God by pouring out her heart. In fact, let's look at her story in Luke chapter 7 and verse number 36. We're going to read it together. It's a little bit lengthy, but we'll all read it together. It's on the screen there as well today. Look what it says in verse 36. It says, "And when the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him, he went to the Pharisees' house and reclined at the table. And a woman in that town who lived a sinful life learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisees' house. So she came there with an alabaster jar of perfume. As she stood behind him at his feet weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissing them, and poured the perfume on them. When the Pharisees who had invited him saw this, they said to themselves, 'If this man were a prophet, he would know who is touching him and what kind of woman she is, that she is a sinner.' But Jesus answered him, 'Simon, I have something to tell you.' 'Tell me, teacher,' he said. He said, 2 people owed money to a certain money lender. One owed about 500 denarii and another 50. Neither of them had the money to pay him back, so he forgave the debts of both. Now, which of them will love him more?' Simon replied, 'I suppose the one who had the bigger debt forgiven.' 'You have judged correctly,' Jesus said. Then he turned toward the woman and said to Simon, 'Do you see this woman? I came into this house, and you did not give me any water for my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You did not give me a kiss, but this woman, from the time I have entered, has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not put oil on my head, but she has poured perfume on my feet. Therefore I tell you, her sins, though they are many, have been forgiven, as her great love has shown. For whomever has been forgiving little loves little, but whoever has been forgiven much loves much.'" Man, I love this story today. Here's this woman. She comes in. She's a sinner, the Bible says. And as she comes in, people are looking at her. People are staring. People are wondering, what is she doing here? And she comes to Jesus' feet, and she takes this alabaster jar of expensive perfume, and she breaks it open, and she pours it upon Jesus' feet, and she loves on him, and she expresses her worship to him. And the people began to look. They began to say, what is she doing here? She's a sinner. Doesn't he know who she is? And what is she doing opening up that jar of oil and pouring it on his feet? Doesn't she know how much that costs? It is so wasteful. But Jesus didn't call it wasteful. Jesus called it beautiful. Jesus said, because she has been forgiven much, she now loves much. And let me just tell you this morning, when we understand how much we have been forgiven, when we understand what God has done for us, when we truly look at our lives and what our lives would be without Him, when we think about our Savior and all that He has done for us, I'm telling you, there's only one way for us to respond, and that is to pour our lives out before Him. Today, what I want to do is I want to just take a couple of moments. I want to talk about this story, and I want to talk about this act of worship, of pouring out our hearts before God. And I just want you to see three things really from this woman's story today. If you're taking notes, you can write these down today. First of all, I want you to notice about her worship that her worship was extravagant. Everybody say extravagant. Her worship was extravagant. Now, what does that mean? What does extravagant mean? Well, I looked up the word extravagant, and it basically means to go over the top. It means to be beyond what is expected, or to do something that is unreasonable or that people don't understand. Now, I started thinking about this. Honestly, I'm not a very extravagant person. I'll just tell you the truth. Like, most of my life is kind of just down the middle. Like, most of the things that I do are kind of moderate, kind of measured. Now, I was just thinking about my life. Like I drive a nice car, but it's not that nice. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a Kia. You know what I mean? It's not like it's a Lexus or anything. I like to go on nice vacations, but they're not that nice, right? Like, I take my family to Disneyland, but we leave and go across the street and eat at McDonald's to save money. I'm just saying that's how we do things in our family. I like to wear nice clothes, but they're not too nice. And if I wear clothes that are a little nicer than normal, I make sure everyone knows that I got them on the sale rack. How many know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, I'm pretty much down the middle, not very extravagant in most of the things that I do. And there's a reason for that. One of the reasons is that I'm a pastor, okay? And so when you're a pastor, if you live an extravagant life, I'll just tell you, like, you live in a glass house. So people say things and people do things and people think things, right? And so if you're too extravagant, you're probably going to get kind of criticized about that. In fact, you might end up on Instagram, you know? I mean, a while back, there was this Instagram page that was called Preachers in Sneakers. I don't know if anybody ever heard of it before, but on the page, what they were doing is they were going to, like, these very famous preachers, and they were taking pictures from their live online, their sneakers that they were wearing, and they were putting this picture, and they were putting how much those, and these guys were wearing some extravagant, sneakers. And I'm going, man, I wish I had the money that they had to spend on those sneakers, right? I'll tell you, I got these sneakers and they were on sale. I'll just say that. I'll say it.
Thank you, Kevin.
You don't want to end up on Preachers and Sneakers. I'm just saying. And so I don't live too extravagant of a life, and sometimes that's because I'm a pastor, but really, most of all, it's because I don't want to be wasteful, Like, I want to be a good steward of my life and of what God has blessed me with. And so I'll have nice things, but they're just not overly nice. And I'll do things, but they're not overly extravagant, right? And yet, here's this woman who comes in and she breaks open this expensive jar of oil. And she doesn't just kind of little dabble, do you? You know what I'm saying? Like, she pours the whole thing. It wasn't measured out. It was poured out upon Jesus' feet. It was an extravagant act of worship. And yet, here's the thing about this extravagant act of worship that this woman brought was that it wasn't done for her. She wasn't extravagant just for herself. Like, we could be extravagant. I could be extravagant and buy nice things and do things just for me. But this woman, she wasn't doing it for her. She was doing it as an act of worship unto God. I started thinking about that. I'm not very extravagant when it comes to things for me. But when it comes to the people that I love, man, it's easy for me to be extravagant, right? When it comes to my family, when it comes to my kids, when it comes to my wife, I was thinking about my daughter, Addie. She just got married just this past summer. And when it came to whatever she wanted for that wedding, I'm just telling you, you know what I mean? Like, because she's my daughter, right? I was thinking about a couple weeks ago, Pastor Amber was telling you about how when Addie was living at home before she was going to get married, she wanted to have a dog. And she was going to, and we're not a dog family. I'm just saying. And so I'm like, man, I don't want no dog. I told you about our dog that we had several years ago, Mikey. He was an excited peer, and he'd pee on your foot. And so we just got rid of him real fast, But my daughter, Addie, she's like, she wanted a dog. And I'm like, we don't do dogs in our family, you know. But it was Addie. It was my daughter. And she's getting married and she's leaving kind of soon. And so all of a sudden, this daddy that doesn't do dogs, all of a sudden was like, okay, I guess we can have a dog at the house. Why? Because she's my daughter. And I love her. And she's worth it, right? I think about my amazing wife, Amber. She's not extravagant either. In fact, if anybody is, low maintenance, it's Amber. If you know Amber, you know what I'm talking about. But every once in a while, she'll decide that she wants something. And if she decides she wants something, I'm telling you, I don't care how expensive it is. I don't care how hard it is to get. Come on, you know what I mean? Why? Because she's my wife. And I love her. And she's worth it. Come on, right? And so this is what was happening is this woman, she breaks open this jar of oil and she pours it upon Jesus' feet. And when she was doing that, what was she doing? It was an act of worship. And it was an extravagant act of worship. What she was saying, Jesus, I love you and you are worth it. She was saying, Jesus, you are worth it. I have found the Messiah, the one who saved my soul, the one who has forgiven me so much. And because I have been forgiven of much, man, I'm going to love God much because he is worthy. And here's what I'm trying to say this morning is that when we really experience the love and the grace and the mercy of what God, come on, when you get a picture of what God has really done for you, you cannot help but pour out your heart in an extravagant act of worship towards him. Her worship was extravagant. Number 2, write this one down. Her worship wasn't just extravagant. Her worship was expensive. Her worship was expensive. Check this out. We don't know exactly how much it cost, but we do know that when we read the other gospel accounts of this story in Matthew and in Mark, that it tells us that the jar of oil would likely have cost up to 1 year's worth of wages. Now think about that for a minute. I don't know how much 1 year's worth of wages is for you, but I want you to get that in your mind. How much do you make in a year? Now think about pouring all of that out, giving all of that in a one-time gift in an act of worship. Now that puts that into perspective just a little bit, doesn't it? This woman took a jar of oil that was worth a year's worth of expenses, and she poured it out all in one moment at the feet of Jesus. This wasn't just extravagant. This was expensive. And yet, here's what I know about worship. Worship is expensive. True worship will cost us. When we truly decide to offer our lives as living sacrifices unto God, come on, that's not inexpensive. That's not cheap. Come on, true worship will always cost us something. It might cost us our pride. It might cost us our comfort. It might cost us our reputation. It might cost us some convenience. It might cost us some time or some energy or some money. But look what David said about it in 2 Samuel 24. David said, I will not offer to the Lord what has cost me nothing. What does he say? He's saying, I'm not going to bring to my God a gift that doesn't cost me something. Because of what he has done for me, man, I'm going to pour it out for him. I'm going to give to him in a way that is costly and that is expensive. And this is what happens with this woman. Listen to this. She doesn't bring her leftovers. She brings her treasure. How oftentimes do we bring to God our leftovers? How oftentimes do we come in on a Sunday morning and we're just dragging ourselves in, whatever's left over from the week before, and we're just kind of offering to him a leftover unto him. And I understand that we bring a sacrifice of worship. I understand that sometimes you come into church and you don't feel like it, you're bringing that sacrifice. But this woman, like, it wasn't just what was left over, it was the treasure of her life. And let me just tell you something. That's what it means to really pour out your heart and your life to God, is to bring to him everything, to bring not just your leftovers, but to bring your treasure unto him, that we would not bring to God something that would not cost us anything, that he is worthy of our worship, that he's worth more than our pride, that he's worth more than our schedule, that he's worth more than our comforts. In fact, I've said it many, many times before, but I'll say it again today. You can give without loving, but you can't love without giving. It's so true that so many times we can give to people, like Christmas time comes around, and there are probably a few people on that list that you give them a gift but don't love them very much. I'm just saying, be honest, right? You can give without loving, but let me just tell you something. You can't love without giving. When you truly love someone, then guess what's going to happen? Giving is going to flow out of your life. And this is what happened for this woman. She had been loved much, and so what did she do? She loved much. She had been forgiven much, so what did she do? She loved much, and she took what she had, and she broke it open, and she poured it upon Jesus' feet in an act of worship. You see, Jesus was worth it. In fact, the Pharisees, they saw him as worthy of a seat at the table, but she saw him as worthy of her heart on that floor. And look at the other side of this. When we break open our lives and pour them out upon Jesus, guess what he does? When we bring to Jesus something costly, he turns around and gives us something priceless. When we give him our lives, what does he do? He gives us his love. He gives us his mercy, his grace, his forgiveness, his purposes, his plans for us. Her worship was extravagant. Her worship was expensive. But then notice number 3 today, and finally, that her worship was eternal. I want you to think about this for just a minute today. This woman comes into the room. Everyone's staring at her. She comes to the feet of Jesus. She takes this expensive jar of perfume and she breaks it open at his feet. She pours it out. And imagine in that room that day, imagine the fragrance that must have began to fill the room. And she poured out the entire jar upon his feet. If you've ever spilled some perfume or broken a bottle of cologne, you know what I'm talking about, right? You smell it all over the house. In fact, I thought it was perfect illustration for today. My wife yesterday, she busted a bottle of essential oil in our house. And man, that oil, you could smell it all the way in the kitchen. You could smell it all the way in the office, in the living room. Like the fragrance filled the whole house. But after a while, the fragrance started to die down. And you didn't smell it anymore. And in that room that day, can you imagine, as that jar of oil is bust open, and you can smell it all through the house, right? But eventually, the fragrance of the oil faded. But the fragrance of her worship never did. In fact, I want you to see what Jesus says about it in Mark's account of this story in Mark chapter 14 and verse 9. Jesus says, "For wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will be told in memory of her." Think about this. The fragrance of the oil faded away, but the fragrance of her worship lasted forever. We're still talking about it today, 2025 years later. We're talking about what this woman did. Her act of worship outlasted her lifetime. And here's what I want you to understand. When you learn to pour out your life before God, when you learn to pour out your heart before him, when you learn that he has forgiven you much and you respond by offering your life unto him as your act of worship. Come on, when you live this lifestyle of worship, it's more than just a moment. It's more than just what happens in a song on a Sunday morning. It's more than just a service like this. That fragrance is there and it's there for a moment, and that moment fades. But what happens in that moment can last for all of eternity. I can tell you that it is that as a mom or a dad or as a grandma or a grandpa, come on, the way you live your life can be passed down to that next generation. All the men that I have in the house today, we talked about this in the first week of this series. We talked about how sometimes men, like, we can be kind of too cool to worship. We got our hands in our pockets, right? And I just let the ladies do that worship thing or whatever. And I challenged you. I said, no. Men, you're the thermostats. You're the thermostat in the home. You're the thermostat at work. You're the thermostat in the church. And so I challenge you to worship, to lift your hands and lift your heart, to set the example in worship. And why was I saying that? I was saying that for this very reason, because when your kids see you lifting your hands in worship, or your kids see you pouring out your heart in worship, hey, that's a moment, and the fragrance fills the room in that moment, but it doesn't end in that moment. Come on. The influence that you have over your children and over your grandchildren, come on, it's something that's eternal. Moms in the house today, when you decide, man, I'm going to live for God with all of my heart, and I'm going to constantly, daily pour my heart out before him, and I'm going to live that way at home and at work and with my friends, guess what? Your kids are noticing, and they're watching. And those moments, man, those moments turn into the eternal, the investment and the difference that you can make in their lives. Grandparents in this place today. I'm about to be one, man. Have I told y'all that yet? I'm going to be a pop just a couple of weeks from now. Last weekend we were having a baby shower for little Davy and for our daughter Briley. And we were sitting in that room, and I was looking around, and I noticed, counting little Davy, who's on his way, is 4 generations. My parents were there, and I was there, and then Briley and Seth were there, and then little Davy's on his way. And my heart was overwhelmed with that generational blessings. My parents set the tone. They lived the life. They set the example, and we followed that example. We've done our best to pour out our lives before God, to live our lives according to His ways. And now our kids are living that. They're following our example in the ministry, and now they're having a little one, and he's going to come along, and they asked us to all say something, a little something over them and over the baby, and I just said, I just believe that God's going to use them in a powerful way. Because look at the generational blessing. Started out actually with my grandparents here, now with the Lord. So this will be 5th generation. Grandparents and parents and parents and parents all the way down who did their best to live this out, to pour out their lives before God. And those moments of worship, those are momentary. And that fragrance, it feels good. You have that moment with God, and that fragrance, it can fade. But the fragrance of the worship is eternal. It can go on from generation to generation to generation. So let me just say this. You may not ever have anybody write a story about you that will pass on and people will read about and study and preach about 2,000 years from now. But you can write a story on your kids' hearts, on your grandkids' hearts, on the kids that you're serving in youth or in life kids, or like every single one of us, the fragrance of our worship, when we give it in an extravagant way, when we're willing to say, it's going to cost me something, but I'm willing to pay the price. It's an eternal thing that God can take and use for all of eternity. So here's what we're going to do this morning. We're going to take a moment, and we're going to focus our minds on what He has done for us. Because when we think about what He has done for us, man, there's only one way to respond. The more we've been forgiven, the more we're going to love, the more extravagant we're going to want to worship Him.
Thank you for joining us online today. Make sure and hit subscribe to this channel and hit the bell for more notifications. We can't wait to engage with you this week.